right, Sam, back with you here. We are, what are we, Thursday, February 22nd. We're late morning here. And again, by request and by the polling that we do amongst the members, I had the winner of the vote here today, one of the three winners, was STRAT to the dollar. So I've got STRAT to the dollar here. This is on Bittrex. And I've got a little bit of work here. Now, the one thing when you have this kind of a range here, you can see back, so you can see why I'm wicking those off here. So back when it started here, and all I've done is just wick off this as, you know, potential pivot that was significant. As we move to the side, you know, then you lose all that perspective. One thing that often can be helpful here is to switch to log scale. So you see how you get that separation here now. Looks, you know, at least you can see it. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but it's, you know, might give you some way to get a handle on what the separation looks like as opposed to this. It gets a little trickier. Now, so the question we have here is, you know, see, I don't know that I'd be trading this as a 1-2. I mean, you could make that case here, but you know, considering the depth of this, that, you know, so you clearly you could make the case that you have an A, B, C, that you can see, you know, we've got three waves there. It's there. But given the depth of it, then you know you've got a little A, B, C here into the B. It's all right there. But I don't know that I'd be approaching this looking for this to be a 3-4. You know, it might turn out that way. Here's the 786. You know, we don't get the algo target. The algo target would have been the absolute low, so that doesn't surprise me terribly. But you do have this ABC coming down here, so it's corrective, right? And it stays internal, right? So from swing low to swing high, it stays internal, and then we get the big rip. You know, it's something to keep in the back of your mind. I don't know if that's how I'd be approaching that. This is awfully deep, right? So that actually looks like, so if I get this hot, you know, if you go through the 786, last one to check is the 887, square root of 786, and interestingly that gets it to the tick. So it's, you know, that's up mighty deep here, so probably too deep for a 4. So let's just use that as a pivot point. So question being now, this looks like, but you might have a 3 or a 5 in there. Do we potentially, this is a technical pivot given the perfect hit on the 887, you know, I do a couple of things here. So I would wick off this pivot here as, you know, potentially that provided us some support, prior resistance here. The last time it got up above the Vegas wave and then failed. Then all of this run up above it. Now we still have back here. We're back to the Vegas wave and failed. So, you know, where are we in the correction? Is this a hard low? Can we make a case for that to be a good low? Well, let's open it up and see if there's anything there that would make sense. So, knowing that that's there, so let's take this off and we'll dig from the other side. So this actually looks to me like you've got a slight truncation in the 5th here. Like with this was probably our 2, 3, 4, and we go up, and I'm going to guess that's our 5 here. So pulling down, so it might look like this. So we'd have, so likely that's your A wave, that's your B wave, and then, you know, where are we in terms of getting our C? So it just, you know, just standard ops, guys. Same thing every time, every chart, same way. That's the power of it. So there's, okay, swing high to swing low. We go right to the 50. Algos kick in, they sell it. They don't get there, they sell it again. Now they get their target. So do you see the little reaction there? Boom, profit taking. Well, it keeps going. So, well, okay, so what could that imply? Well, now that I look at this, you know, it's hard not to, you know, if you're an Elliott wave trader, it's pretty hard not to see a 5 wave in there. So we get a 1, we get a 3 wave into a 2. It's deep for a 2, granted. There's our 3. That sure looks like that could be a 4, and that maybe there's a 5 down here. So, you know, it's hard, you know, if you've done this as long as I have, to not see that or not have that just screaming at you. 5 wave. So, you know, again, same thing, always the same. So I'd wick off the 1 high. Well, that note here, we don't overlap it. So we stay impulsive. You know, there's a little kicker up here. So you know, potentially here you have, you know, you might be able to, what are we on, a 4 hour? You might be able to make the case here that that sure looks to me like an ABC. So if I work it this way, So A, B, and then looks like we get a 1, 2, 3, 4 up for a 5 into a C. That hard to argue with that. You know, maybe if you dug down, we could find that in a different way if we go down to a smaller time frame. But just sometimes, just at first glance, that's, you know, that's something to be considered. So what do you see right off the bat? Is there any relationship here that's significant between the length of the A projected from the B? Anything there to help me? Well, that's, you know, we're just shy of the 100. There's the 233. You know, it's, you know, and then I would look at it this way as well. Then I'd work from that low to the A. Well, here's the 50. Here's the algo target. So bump, bump, bump. One more push up. They can't get to 100%. That's the very common target for the A relative to the low. That's the B. But you can see here, just as algos took profit here, here's the buy at the 50. Chop. They take some profit. There's one more kick up, and then you get the reaction. So that sure does. It's hard to argue with that as an ABC. So where are we now? So that would suggest to us, so now we could pull out here. Now I'm still on a 4 hour, right? So I haven't even dug down beyond that. Now, does that, just because this is here doesn't mean we're going there, but I certainly have some good targets. So I'm going to take that one off. We saw this one here that would set up this as our 4. So again, just standard ops here, just length of the 3. You know, 50, almost to the tick, right? I mean, it actually looks like it is to the tick. I get it right on there. So it's front run by a couple of ticks. Now that should be no surprise. There should be no surprise here. Even if you were looking for the buy here, this is the first place you'd look for the resistance, right? Major pivot to major pivot. The 50, you know, the algos are going to kick in and start selling there. You know, again, nothing you haven't seen hundreds of times if you're watching any of my videos. So we had it here. Perfect 50, retest on the 50. They got their target. Now we go again. You know, again, same thing over and over again. Doesn't matter what the chart is, what the market is, what the time frame is. The power of this is doing the same thing every time. Maybe you think that's boring, or, you know, you're looking for something new, some sexy way to do it. I'm telling you, if you want to make money, this is how you do it. 1, 2, 3, 4. So where could that be going? Well, we get the algo target down here, right? So far, they haven't done too badly. They're making money in here. You know, does it go there? Well, you know, you certainly could make the case that that's the next pit stop. So let's look here. So let's take the length of the 1. So if I take it here, if I take the length of the 1, next thing I can measure, looking for patterns that are prone to repeating, is from the length of the 1 projected from the 4. All right, so common areas that you would look for. 100% right here. Okay, that's a common one. We also 127, 1618. That would be an extreme. So all of these, now here we get a little confluence zone down here where we get the 1272, right? Square root of 1618, commonly seen technically. You know, a pitchfork, you know, probably worth keeping on there. So I'm working with the length of the 2 from the 4. You know, that might be a little too steep for it. So I don't have much to work with there. So I might just eyeballing here, looking at this zone down here. Might take a quick look at the shift. You know, modified shift. That's a channel. That's kind of interesting there. So I might leave that there. You got to dial these in right on the pivots. So I would get that, make sure that's right on. So that's an interesting potential pivot zone here. So setting up a double bottom. Here's the 100, which would be a very common pivot zone. So you'd get the confluence here of a potential pivot at the 100%, the length of the 1 wave projected from the 4. So this market seems to like the 50s and the 100s. So we've got the 1 here projected from the 4. Here's the 100%. Here's the sell at the 50. So whatever reason, sometimes markets, they have kind of a personality, or there's certain pivots that seem to just play, and that's what you've got there. Now, that doesn't mean that it goes there and bounces, but it's certainly setting up as a candidate for a bounce. But if it does, now look, if it does, where's the resistance? We're going to have to fight back through the same thing because the pivot is right here. So if we bounce here as a double bottom, you got the same struggle going back up. The difference being you'd have a completed 5-wave structure. So you would certainly want to pay attention to that, right? So you know that that's likely to be there on the way back up. But since it completes, you got to pull it now all the way from the high. I mean, you'd have to check both of these, but I'd start on that one. So if, just hypothetically, if we pivot down here on this as a double bottom, well, here's all the resistance you got to get through on the way up. Here's the 50. You got to get all the way over that to absolutely confirm that hard low, because you're going to get resistance along the way. So, that's just the reality of it. So, yeah, I mean, I know, again, I've got people that are long this coin that want to see this thing run, pull it out here. There's lots of upside, but, that is a very technical sell-off that is going to take a lot of buying to get that thing to reverse that trend and not come down here and finish this fifth. So now, of course, you can just look at it and see it here. So that's how I have this counted. But of course, there's going to be the same potentially support here coming back down. So let's just pull here. Right? Remember, same thing. So what have we done? We've just gone to the 618. So just as the 50 was here sitting as resistance, this is likely support here. Now, could we have something else on our hands? Is it possible that we've got this counted incorrectly, and that this ends up being our hard low, and we've got a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 into that? It looks less likely, but if this holds, if that holds, and right now it's just algorithms are kicking in to try and defend it because they don't give a shit about an Elliott wave. They're just trading the pivots, right? If we get this thing, if this does hold, right, well then, it's too soon to call that a 1-2. It just too soon, because it would just be sitting there, ready to do that. It just too soon for it. So you need to get better confirmation, because this really is a struggle to try and get that into a 5 wave. Could you make it? Yeah, I mean, you could probably, this is where, having your bias can be an issue. You could probably make that case, right? That you had a 5 wave, but is that really what that looks like? It's possible. It's possible. So you'd have a completed 5. You're making the case here that that's your 2. Well, if that's your 2, so how are you going to know, right? So if you're going to just ignore the 5-wave structure that's set up here for this thing to come down and finish with a 5th. If you just go like, that's not what I see. I see a 5-wave going into a 1-2. All right. Well, let's look at that. Okay. Maybe. Then you're seeing this. Well, that number 1 doesn't look great as an ABC. That looks much more like that's just the A wave here. But again, let's just say you got that. So here's what you're looking for. So you're trying to make the case, if you're a bull here and you're a buyer there, that's what's happening. Now let's pull out, because you can get lost. Looking down here, you're on the 15-minute. You think you've got it. Does that make sense? Yeah. I mean, yeah. Maybe you could make a case there that's a contender. So you might have that. I wouldn't have that as my primary count. I'd have that as an alternate count. Yeah. I mean, again, you start trying to talk yourself into it. Okay, prior resistance here. That could be. Yeah, we don't make the median line, but I love. We're right to the golden zone. It's a lot of talking yourself into it. Does that make sense? I mean, one thing that we're seeing is these pivots are very technical. So you've got a technical pivot here, but that pattern looks suspect to me. So I'm going to just go back down just to finish up here. Let's go down to the 1 hour and see if you really do have a strong case for that as a 5 wave. So this is the play you're trying to make. Let's just measure it, right? And see if it really makes sense. So let's take that off. I'm going to take that wave off. Let's change that color. Go get the wave off. Okay, so trying to play that as a 4-5. Well, it's yeah, you could make a case there. So let's measure here. Let's check it. Is 3? It looks like 3 would qualify. You've got a little subtle ABC here into the 4. We get a diagonal, right? So we overlap the 1. So let's just measure it here. So I'm going to take this off just so we can see. Do we have a good 5 wave? So working from the low to the 1 high. Well, okay, that's technical. That's good. We go right to the algo target. So from this to this, yeah, they hit. We don't get a steep reaction. Eventually, we get the reaction. So now, how do we look between the 2 and the 4? So is that technical? Looks like it's likely candidate. So there's the 4. So yeah, I mean, it's there. It's there. You could make that case. You know, that's not the prettiest looking one ever. That's much like what we saw with, you know, most of the majors. Bitcoin, Ethereum, all of them had this very funky, choppy, you know, even hard to get a count on it into that 1, 2, but the 2 is technical. You know, so this is what makes it tough, right? So, you know, you certainly could make the trade here. You could make that trade. So you'd have to be looking at it going, you'd have to be going, okay, that's 1, that's a B, so we're going to have a short C. You know, you got 5 waves in the A. It's a skinny little B. You know, I don't love that enough to take it. But if you just want to just pull the trigger there because you love this project, you're kind of ignoring the larger count. So you're saying, okay, well, I love this project. I want to be a buyer here. So I'm going to put my stop. You could put your stop under the 2 because that would invalidate this. All right. So now you're heading lower. So there's that. There's your first target, but if you're trading that as a 2, you know, you got much bigger target. Well, here's that major resistance you're going to run into. That's almost 9 to 1. So there's a case to be made for that. Again, just kind of pulling out a little bit. Does that make sense? So it would have to be AB. A, B, C. Yeah, you know, it's. I mean, yeah, yeah, it's probably there. It's probably there. So I can look here. So this would have to be 1, 2. So we'd have to look at it this way and say, okay, 1, 2. You could play it this way. All right, so maybe I'm talking myself into the trade. I don't know. I don't love the structure. So you know, that's kind of a judgment call. I mean, the risk reward is pretty reasonable. So I'd measure here. That's, you know, looks more to me like the 3 is down here rather than here. This would be the 1, 2, 3, 4 in this. This is what I see, right? So you'd be operating on the assumption that, you know, maybe you got a truncated 5th down here. I guess you could work that. You could, you know, again, it feels to me like if you're trying to play off of that, you're kind of talking yourself into the trade. So if you know, it's a contender, right? You could build a case for it, which is always what I'm trying to do in these videos. Is can we build a case for a technical pivot? Well, you've got awfully low risk there, so you could certainly get into it. You know, if you love the project, you know that's 9.6 to 1. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. And if you stopped out, it's a very small loser, right? So you took a run at it, you know, on the idea that you had a 1, 2, get stopped out, and that's all right. You reload. Maybe it comes down here. Maybe we come back down here to this pivot. That's where, you know, I see it going. That's the double bottom, the 100%, the length of the 1 projected from this as the 4. That's there. Truncated 5th. That's a little bit of a stretch, but right now that golden zone is holding. You know, it's deep, but it's holding. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's the 1. We're putting in the 2. So you're just going to allow for this very, very short C wave, right? As I just showed you. I mean, it's, again, you know, does that look likely? Does that look likely as an A, B down for the C? I mean, it's possible, right? So, you know, that's where you got to just make a judgment call. How much do you love this project? How you know, are you itching to get into it? Does that look like it's enough to take the trade? Well, the risk reward, you know, nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it. Risk reward is awfully good, and you know, as long as you've got a tight stop on it, you know, have at it. Have at it. You can make a case for it. It might be a hero kind of a trade. It's there. It wouldn't be one that I would take. I would wait. So, you know, if it's going to go, so here's why you could wait. Because if that's going to play as a 1, 2, it has to come out of here impulsively. It has to come out of here with an impulse, right? Well, we could have the 1 wave of the 3rd wave, so I'm going to strike that. It wouldn't have to be impulsive, but you'd certainly be looking for 5 waves, because if it's going to go all the way up to those upper targets, you know, you're going to have to get a good 1 wave, and yeah, that could be a leading diagonal. So we don't have to be impulsive, but we do have to get 5 waves coming out of it. So how do you know if this starts to move? So you're going to look for 5 waves in the 1 of the 1. Right, so it just is a matter of, again, it's deductive reasoning. Do we get 5 waves into the 1 of the 1, then stepping back out? Where could this be going? You know, so here would be your 1, 2, hypothetical 3, 4, 5. well, if you're going to stay down on those smaller time frames, I want to see 5 into that 1. Where's the next trade? If I get that, that would confirm this as the 2. Then if you had that in the 1, then you could trade the 2. So you could just look for the buy in between the 50 and the 618. That would be a little bit, more thoughtful way to approach it, rather than just, gripping it here and ripping it because you just like the project and you're willing to kind of rationalize yourself into it. That's how I see it. Anyway, I'm kind of long-winded here. I went too long. That's 20 minutes. All right, guys, I'll wrap it there, and we'll come back to visit this and see how it plays out.